Hey everybody, this is Matt, and this is my first ClixRule Podcast. And basically, this is just going to be talking about stuff that went on this week, or around this week. And this is the podcast for the week of Christmas 2017. And you would think not a lot really was supposed to go on during Christmas time, but a lot of cool stuff did go down. So we're going to talk about it, and thanks for tuning into this. So the schedule for the podcast today is we're gonna be talking about the Watchlist Q4 2017 results. They just came in the other day. How are they gonna change certain figures, or errata them, or whatever? Then we're going to be talking about the upcoming set X-Men Xavier School. WizKids posted some pre-release information about them, along with some sculpts, which are really cool. Then we're going to switch over to talking about the upcoming Organized Play prize kit Booster Golden, which should be given out in January, and stores should be getting it around in December. And then finally, we're going to finish up with some recent rulings from the official rules forum, and there aren't much, but we'll go over them, or we'll try to. So let's just get it started then. Okay, so we're talking about the Watchlist Q4 2017 results. If you don't know what that is, basically about maybe 4 times, well, I'd say more like 2 times a year, WizKids will take a look at what are the most prominent and potent pieces in the modern format right now. And the modern format is basically just like the most recent sets that just come out. And they'll be like, okay, which of these figures do we need to adjust? And that's where they will add some figures onto the watch list, and they'll make an article saying, we've added these pieces onto the watch list, we may or may not make some changes to them. And it's about 50-50. Well, no, they usually change them, but sometimes they don't. So they posted an article a few weeks ago talking about adding some figures to the watch list, and they just posted the results a few days ago about how they're going to change some pieces. So let's just go over what some of those pieces are and how they're being changed, and I'll kind of just give my opinion on them. But before we get started on my opinion, I just want to make it clear that I am completely 100% a casual for fun player. So these pieces that are getting changed, I'm very happy to see big changes made to them, because they affect the casual games in a very negative way when they get played, especially when they're brought week after week after week after week. They just completely degrade the fun for all the players. So I'm happy to see big sweeping changes, and I just wanted to point that out before we get into it. Okay, so the first piece that's getting an errata is the Joker number 60 from Joker's Wild. And you can tell this is the Joker because right behind his sculpt is the big words ha ha ha. So a lot of people just call him ha 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 Joker. And okay, so he was kind of busted for a few different reasons. You could play him between 30 to 50 points, either 30, 40, or 50 points. And depending on what point you played him at, he had more clicks of life. And basically, every 6 clicks of life on his dial would symbolize 10 points. So if you played him at 30 points, he had 18 clicks of life. Basically, you had to deal 18 damage to him for him to be KO'd. If you played him at 50 points, you had to deal 30 damage to him to be KO'd. That by itself makes him, in my opinion, the most broken piece ever created in the history of the game. Because you can't find any other piece in the history of the game that has that much life for that few points. What made it worse was his ability to, just at the beginning of your turn, you may roll a d6, and half the result when you do either heal or damage him that many clicks. So like, let's say you deal 5 damage to him, and you're like, okay, he's right on that last click before he passes the line. Well, he could be like, okay, I'm gonna heal, and he rolls a 3 and he heals up 3. So, we were talking about those 30 clicks of life he can have. Well, he can have more than that because he could be healing himself up every single turn. If you're trying to just pump as much damage into him, he can be healing, a lot every single turn. So it made it ridiculous. And, every game that I have played locally with him in it, I've never played the piece, but I've been on the opposite side of someone else playing the piece. Every single game, and we usually play battle royales and stuff more often, basically ended up every other player teaming up against the haha Joker, and sometimes still not KOing it, because it has too much life, too much ability to heal back up. And while you're focusing on this 30-point piece, the other 270 points is killing you. So let's talk about how they changed them up. They changed up. The first thing they changed up was the healing ability. And so, like I said, originally it was your option if you wanted to roll it. Now it's mandatory. You have to roll it. And right off the bat, I was thinking about it. One big thing that's going to happen, the first turn of the game, or whenever Joker is on like the first click of a new line, because it's every 6 clicks, then there's a line. So on the first click of that, or maybe even the second click of that, he's gonna have to think to himself, if I roll, I can't heal myself, or I'm gonna pass a line and then lose a token, So he's gonna have to purposely damage himself at that point. So like if he's on click number 2 and he rolls a d6 and he rolls a 4, okay, that means he has to either heal himself 2 or damage himself 2. So at that point he's like, well, if I heal myself 2, then I go, from 2 to 1 to back to 6 or whatever click number it is, maybe 12, and that passes the line. So that means I lose a token. So I have to damage myself, go from 2 to 3 to 4, click number 4, in order to not lose a token. And in that respects, I think the Joker will be dealing more damage to himself on average, because it's mandatory to roll. It puts the Joker in a worse situation. And then also at that point, the player can like hang back and do kind of this like in and out type of motion, where like when Joker is high on his dial, like on click 1 or 2 or click number 7 or 8, leave him alone, let him damage himself. And then when he gets lower into the dial, like click 5 or 6 or click 11 or 12, then you go after it, because that's when you can hit him for 1 or 2 and knock him past the line. So I think in that case by itself, it makes Joker much more manageable. Because if you can just get away from him, he will be struggling by himself just to take damage and heal by himself. But also they changed one more thing to him, and it kind of goes into the whole thing when I was talking about how many clicks of life he has. And basically it made him the most potent mastermind fodder ever made. I mean, they literally say the Joker is almost certainly the greatest mastermind fodder ever made. And I mean that tells you how messed up and overpowered he was. With his ability to heal, with his ability to have so many freaking clicks of life, ridiculous. They changed it where he cannot be chosen for mastermind, which, honestly, I think it's fine. I don't know if it's really needed, because with the whole, at the beginning of the turn you have to roll thing. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to mastermind 4 damage on the Joker. Well, I mean, in the case of him taking damage and then being able to heal on the next turn, sure, that would be potent there. But if he don't attack the person, and then Joker takes damage, and then you attack the person, he's at the point where, okay, well, if I masterminded onto the Joker, he's gonna lose a token. So, I think in that case, it was okay change. I don't know if it was absolutely needed. Again, the whole in and out thing where you attack him, when he's lower on the dial, and not attack him when he's higher on the dial, when he's gonna damage himself. That's probably the best way of handling him now. So I'm pretty good with the Joker. I'm happy he got changed. I think he probably won't see as much play because some of the people that were playing it were like, "Yeah, he has like the most clicks in the entire game, and he's super campy, and I can stay alive the whole game." And now it's not as easy to just it's not just a a point and click piece anymore. So I think. Maybe it will curb his play style a little bit, but the people that really want to be really creative with him can be really creative with him. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so moving on to the next piece, they just bring up the boxing ring, and it's they put it on the watch list, and the boxing ring is fairly new. It came out as a convention exclusive. It was comboed with Muhammad Ali and Superman pieces, which is really weird. It's from this really, really old storyline, this really, really old comic. And the boxing ring is funny. If you think of boxing ring and Superman and Muhammad Ali, you're thinking, okay, this is just a fun thing. But then you start reading into the boxing ring, and it has this ability where lines of fire from inside the boxing ring out, the person gets a -2 to their attack, and if you're outside the ring shooting in, they get a -2 to their attack. So you ended up having these pieces they have hypersonic speed and stuff that could run out, punch somebody, and run back into the ring. And then if you try to shoot me, well, you get a -2 to your attack, and if I have energy shield deflection, then I get a +2 to my defense. So your 10 attack goes down to an 8, and my 17 defense goes up to a 19, and now you have to hit an 11 just to hit me back from range. And that's where it really became what the heck? And I think that's part of the reason why it got watch listed. Well, WizKids felt okay, we could do some kind of changes, but maybe it don't need to be changed much right now. So the only thing they're changing is so regular pieces only have one little click, one small dial. They can only occupy one square of the ring. But multi-base characters, like peanut-based characters that have two squares, that fill up 2 squares, or even colossals or giants that take up 4 squares or even more, they could originally be able to occupy partially inside the ring and outside the ring. And I guess at that point it came down to I'm gonna shoot you with a part of me that's outside the ring, so I don't get a -2 to my attack. But then if you shoot at me, I don't know if part of you are in the ring, they still get a -2. I don't know. Either way, WizKids must have thought this was confusing. So they said multi-base characters cannot partially occupy the boxing ring. During a single move, they must either have enough movement left to occupy put themselves in all the way in the ring, or they must stop outside of it. And I guess that's okay. I guess that's something they had to do. It's not really something. I don't think it's really gonna affect too much. I wasn't seeing a lot of people using the boxing ring with multi-base characters and sitting midway in there. But again, I do more casual events, so maybe I didn't get to see the boxing ring used at its most potent, potential. But okay, so they didn't really change much with the boxing ring, and a lot of people don't have the boxing ring because it's a convention exclusive piece, so that you had to pay $50 for. So yeah. It's fine, whatever. Let's move on to the Big Daddy, Unimind. Okay, so Unimind is a super rare from the Mighty Thor set, so it's relatively new, and it has some abilities that they needed to adjust. Basically, you can play him at 150 points, or 275 points, or 370 points, and he has this ability where he can choose eternal keyword pieces and put them on your sideline, depending on how many points he's played at. And then every turn he can choose a power from their show and dial, kind of like a pick a power, kind of like when a piece is possessed and you get to choose a power from the possessor possessor every turn, Unimind gets to choose a power from each eternal person he puts on his sideline. So like at 150 points, you get to choose 3 characters, and so that means that's 3 powers he can choose every turn. And his ability was, at the beginning of each player's turn, and whenever Unimind would take damage, he gets to choose powers again. So you could do this really ridiculous thing where like, okay, now it's my turn. I'm the Unimind player. I'm going to choose Hypersonic Speed, Still Energy, and Probability Control. So then I can run out there, punch you, heal up with Still Energy, and then if I miss, I can prob my own attack. Okay, and now it's the beginning of your turn. I'm going to choose Impervious, Shape Change, and Stealth. So now, I can sit in stealth so you can't shoot me. If you run up to try to punch me, I get my shape change. And if you get past your shape change, then I get impervious roll. And that's where it really became like super offensive and super defensive, like the best piece, And it really was. I mean, it was dominating pretty much all the competitive events. Some people were bringing out like the shredder chases, which could, whenever they move next to someone, they deal like 1 poison or something. I don't know. It was weird. And then also, what made it worse was the powers he chose. They couldn't be pulse waved. They were protected by pulse wave. And he had power cosmic too. So you couldn't outwit him unless he used his perplex, which we're getting into the next part. So he also had this perplex, which was really messed up. For each eternal piece that you put on your sideline, so for like 150 points, you get to choose 3 pieces. You get to use perplex, but it's not just a regular perplex. It's a +2 or -2 perplex. Okay, so the way they had it, and they didn't change this, was okay for 3 pieces. You get to use perplex, and then for every 2 pieces additional, you get to use another perplex. So I guess with 3 pieces you could use 2 + 2 perplexes, because there's 3, or would that count as 3 perplexes because it's 2? No, I think you only got 2 perplexes but 3 characters. Still though, you could be like you could be like +2 to my attack and +2 to my damage, and suddenly he's hitting for 6 damage and he has like a 13 attack or something. It was ridiculous. And if he used the perplex, then he didn't have power cosmic. But if he didn't use the perplex, then he had power cosmic. So I mean, like, if you chose these really defensive powers, you couldn't outwit them and you couldn't pulse wave them, and that was just ridiculous. So what did they change? They changed 2 things. They changed the perplex. They changed it to, okay, normally he could use his perplex on anything. So one popular thing he would do is he would use an ID card summon in a big dude, and then he would perplex up their attack and damage and be like, okay, they got a +2 to their attack, +2 to their damage, and I'm gonna blow a hole in you. Maybe they would use Nick Fury or something that, is ridiculous. But now they changed it where he can only use his +2 perplex on characters that have the eternal keyword. So that's good. That means he can still use it on himself and make himself like really bulky with like +3 defense. But he can't just like use it on random ID summons, and he can't just use it on friendly characters that are near him. Now he can use his regular perplex, which is just like a +1 or a -1 on anybody. But at that point he's only getting a +2 at max to 1 stat. So he could be like, okay, Nick Fury, you get +1 attack, +1 damage, and that's it. It's not as potent. So they changed that part, and then they changed they changed how he gets to pick his powers with the eternal pieces on the sideline. And like I said, basically he got to choose it at the beginning of each player's turn, and he got to choose it whenever he took damage. So now he only gets to pick powers at the beginning of his own turn. So there's none of this like, I can be offensive during my turn and defensive during your opponent's turn. He has to choose right then. Do I want to be like partially defensive? Do I want to go stealthy and then maybe do Psychic Blast and then maybe end up with prob. So I can prob both turns, and then I can Psychic Blast you be offensively, but then I can be stealthy, so I can be defensively. He has to choose right then, and I think that's going to make him much harder to play. He still can't be pulse waved. Those powers cannot be ignored when pulse waved, and if he doesn't use his perplex, which he may or may not do, he can't be outwitted. So he still has a lot going for him. How do I feel about his changes? I like him. I like him a lot. I think they definitely went back and they said, okay, what was our original idea for this dude? You know, like, was our idea for him to be like the ultimate perplexer to anything, or was he more of just like a this is an Eternals character who's getting power from Eternals, you know? And that's why, you know, I really like how they changed the perplex to only +2 or -2 when you're targeting Eternals. And then they went back and they said, okay, Pick a Power is busted. We know it's busted. We've been making figures for years with Pick a Power, and it's always been busted. We just made this more busted because he gets to Pick a Power more often. And so let's just cut that. Let's cut that out. You know, he doesn't get a Pick a Power every blink of an eye. And that'll probably make him a little bit easier. So, and that's what they needed to do. Pick a Power, in my opinion, is probably the worst mechanic that ever happened to the game. Every single piece that's come out with Pick a Power has been strong, if not dominant in the meta, most of them just completely take the fun out of the casual game. You know, it doesn't. I mean, some of them are more restricted, like can only choose attack powers and stuff like that, which it doesn't completely ruin the game when you play them. But when you bring some of these Pick a Powers like Jakeem Thunder and stuff like that, it just takes all the fun out of the game. You know, it just takes all the fun out of the game. When I mean, I'm gonna get into a little rant right here, but basically it completely disrupts the flow of the game, where two characters are fighting, both get hurt, and both are supposed to get weaker, while the Pick a Power piece chooses regen and phasing, and phases to the side of the map and regens back up, and the other character goes, I don't have that option, so I'm just going to stay weak, and then the Pick a Power piece comes back on their first click and destroys the other piece. It's like Wolverine in every single battle he's ever been in. They're like, okay, I'm going to blow you full of lead. And he's like, okay, I'm going to cut off an arm. 5 minutes later, hey, Wolverine's healed up again, and you're still missing that arm. I mean, you know, I mean, that's exactly why Pick a Power is bad for the game. So, I'm happy what they did with Unimind. I think, I don't know how he's going to affect the meta. I don't play the meta. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. I think some people may as well still play him, though. But I'm happy with the changes. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Okay, let's move it on. Now, they slid in this rules change. And I don't like it. I really don't. But, I mean, it makes sense. I just don't like it. So, basically, they were talking about, okay, well, you know, Pick a Power pieces are really OP. Duh. And they're saying, well, we need to give the players some way to counteract Unimind. Duh. How about don't make pieces like Unimind? So, you know, the only pieces that have ever been able to, like, take on Pick a Power pieces are pieces that say, like, you can't use defensive powers or defense powers. There's been a few, like, there's been, like, a Prime Peggy Carter, I believe, that if it was within, like, X squares of someone, they couldn't use defense powers or something. And that's the only way to get around something like that, because, I mean, you think about it, like, okay, they're playing Unimind, which may start out with Invincible. They may choose Impervious. They may have a possession on them that gives them, I don't know, Invulnerability. And then they have a resource that's giving them Toughness. And you're just like, or a resource that's giving them Super Senses or something. And you're like, well, freaking crap. You know, how do I get past 4 defensive powers? You know, and in the past, something like a piece that says can't use defense powers normally meant just can't use the power that's showing up in their defense slot. So they got rid of like one of those 3 defensive powers or defense powers. I don't know why I keep saying defensive, because they are defensive, whatever. Which it didn't really, I mean, it helped against one of the powers, but it didn't really help overall. So what they're saying is they're going to change it. It says any piece that says can't use this type of power, where the type is like speed, attack, defense, or damage, applies to both powers currently in their slot and any standard powers that they get through any other means. So that's a resource, a possession, any other means, pick a power, anything. So that's good. It's good that they're like, hey, we may come out with some more pieces that can counteract these pick-a-power pieces because we're realizing we created a monster. But at the same exact time, it makes me think about one piece that pops out, and it's the Chase Green Arrow from Elseworld set. And the reason that piece jumps out to me is because he's overpowered to begin with. Basically, he's like 80 points. And if he's out on clear terrain, you can only target him if you're within three spots of him. He has improved targeting characters, so he can hide behind his friendly characters and shoot you through your own friendly characters. So he ignores elevated, he ignores hindering. So the only thing that blocks line of fire to whatever piece he wants to shoot is blocking terrain. So he can hit you really easily. He starts out with 12 attack, and I believe RCE, range combat expert. And then he has this ability where if whenever he range attacks somebody, I think they can't use defense powers. And I mean, like in a casual game, that piece is insane. Because all it needs is a perplex or two, and suddenly he's shooting across the map, or not across the map, but good distance, and he's one-shotting most of your pieces. Because like, oh, you have super senses, well, you can't use it. He doesn't need precision strike to say, oh, you can't use super senses, or your super senses is weaker. He can just say you can't use super senses. He doesn't need psychic blast to say, oh, you can't reduce the damage while you're impervious. He just says you can't use impervious, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's pieces like that should be watch listed, in my opinion. It's pieces like that, like Haha Joker, like Unimind, that are just like, they just don't, they bend the rules too much. They do stuff that is just too much. If it was just any of those elements on one piece, just one of those elements on one piece, it would be an interesting character. You give like a bullseye the ability to shoot through any kind of terrain, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Or you give it to a Cosmic Spider-Man or something, and that's interesting, Or you give the ability can't use defense to like a Peggy Carter, who's weaker, who can probably just be punched one time and killed, and that's interesting. But you put all those abilities on one single character, make him 80 points, and you're just like, what the frick? And now WizKids is doing this thing where, it used to be Green Arrow was limited just the power showing in your defense slot. So like if you had a resource or a special object or a possession on that character, they could also use the defense power they get from that. But now they can't. So Green Arrow can just say it doesn't matter, Other than shape change, which is a damage power, which in my opinion it should be more of it should be defense power, but it would completely wreck the game if they moved it over there. It gets past everything, and I kind of don't like that at all. So yeah, it makes Green Arrow even more busted, which means, people bringing Green Arrow to a fun, casual event because he has Gotham City keyword is now going to just ruin the fun even more for all the other players at the event. And that sucks. I can see where they're coming from. They gotta clean something up, clean up some wording so it makes more sense. But at the same exact time, they got rid of one monster, Unimind, only to replace it with another monster, Green Arrow, in which, while Green Arrow only has like toughness or something, and if you can somehow run up to him, get past all his friendly characters and punch him for like 5 or 6 damage, then sure, maybe he can get KO'd. He's a lot easier to KO, but he's just too damn potent for 80 points too. So Okay, so moving on. Let's see. Then they throw in this sneaky change. No, he wasn't even on the watch list to begin with, and it's Jakeem Thunder. And basically the Jakeem Thunder is he I mentioned him earlier. He's another pick a power piece. And the thing to him is, when he picks his powers, he can choose 2 standard powers, but only one of them may be a defense power, and then they added on a few other options. So like, they didn't want to just give him access to every power like they did with like Unimind, or not Unimind, but other pick a power pieces like Goblin King. They wanted to limit him in some way, so they said only one of those 2 powers can be a defense power: hypersonic speed, outwit, perplex, or pulse wave. So he could choose probability control and perplex. He could choose probability control and hypersonic speed, but he couldn't choose hypersonic speed and perplex, because those 2 can't be combined. And he can't use a defensive power and hypersonic speed, or defense power and perplex, So they limited him. But they were thinking, what's a power that's not a defense power that's been really, really useful recently as a defense power? Shape change. And shape change, I will say, I think shape change, right now, shape change is being played more than I think it's ever been played. It's really, really good because it's so easy to add it on to characters. You have the symbiote canister, which is a special object. I think it's like 8 or 10 points, and the character can pick it up, and they have shape change, automatically breakaway, and plasticity, I think. And there's ways to add shape change with a possessor. There's ways to add shape change with a resource. There's ways to pick shape change. It's really become a very potent ability. And basically, shape change is kind of a lot like super senses, but it's the timing on it. Super senses is after you've been hit, you can try to dodge it. Think about it. Someone's already shot the bullet, and now you're dodging the bullet. Shape change is the opposite. Shape change is before the gun is fired, you're throwing a rock at the dude, and he's like, oh crap, here comes the rock, and I have to move, and I may completely just miss. I may not even be able to make the attack in the first place, and that's where shape change is. I mean, to think about it, it is almost exactly like super senses, just the timing is different, and yet shape change is a damage power, not a defense power. So, I mean, WizKids is like, okay, we recognize that shape change is really a defense power in disguise that for historical reasons lives in the damage slot. Okay, and when is that going to be corrected? I don't think it could ever be corrected, because if they move it to the damage slot, then they need to modify it in some way. If they move it to the defense slot, they have to modify it in some way where it's not just super senses. But if they keep it in the damage slot, then it's like, okay, there's some other powers that also act very defensively, like stealth. You choose stealth, and it's like, it's almost like a damage reducer, because if they can't see into hindering terrain, they can't shoot you. It's better than a damage reducer. You're reducing the attack's damage to 0 at that point, because you're never getting attacked. There are powers like that I really feel like they may need to, down the road, really kind of adjust, because stealth is by far no way a speed power. I mean, you don't see Flash or Superman or any of that kind of stuff when they're moving using stealth. No, stealth is you stick in one place and you don't get attacked. And so anyways, getting back to the topic, they're like, shape change is really a defense power, and when you combo it with other defense powers, it gets really too potent. So we're gonna say Jakeem Thunder can't choose shape change with a defense power. He can either choose shape change or defense power, and I think that makes a lot of sense for all the stuff I've just said before this. So whatever. So I'm happy with the overall watch list changes. I am really happy with them. I think certain little things like can't be masterminded for Joker may not be needed. The multi-base characters occupying the boxing ring, whatever, but there's a lot of good changes here, and I'm actually happy to see good changes because, Jakeem Thunder was on the last watch list, and when it came up, they're like, oh no, we don't need to change anything for Jakeem Thunder because he seems just fine after, dominating the meta for like a million months. And now they're like, oh, I think we made a mistake. We need to add on shape change. And they could come back and change any of these other pieces too. But I like the changes. I'm happy that these changes will probably deter a few people from playing these pieces at a casual event and ruining the fun for everybody. So that's a good thumbs up for me. And I welcome anybody else to post their thoughts below on the watch list changes. Okay. So I just spent 36 minutes talking about the watch list Q4 2017 results. And I didn't expect it to speak 36 minutes on it, but I guess podcasts are supposed to be long. So if you're still listening, then you deserve an honorary Master Scout badge for that. I listened to a boring dude talk for 36 minutes. So yeah, you deserve that badge. Let's move on to the next topic, which is the X-Men Xavier School. It used to be called X-Men First Class, but now it's X-Men Xavier School. It's a new set coming out in 2018, and they're talking about some pre-release information, and hopefully I can post some images of some of these sculpts. They showed off 4 different sculpts: Magneto, Storm, Wolverine, and Angel. And basically this set, it's gonna have X-Men characters. It's gonna have characters from the school where Xavier or whoever teaches. Let me see if I can find a picture of the booster pack. Let's see, I had a picture of the booster pack. Okay, so it has a Age of Apocalypse sub-theme. It has a Headmaster sub-theme, which is the people that have run the school. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some more Brotherhood of Mutants. Is that what it's called? Brotherhood of Mutants. More pieces like that. So it's interesting. We got a X-Men set back in 2015 with Wolverine and the X-Men, and now we're getting another one, or maybe it was 2016. It might have been 2016. But basically the pre-releases are coming up, so tell your stores they have some important dates to plan for them. They have to be scheduled. The pre-release events have to be scheduled between the 13th of December and the 3rd of January. That means you have to set it up in the system between that time. And then the events must be run between the 31st of January and the 13th of February. So yeah, and then the set comes out February 14th, which is interesting. So it's the next Heroclix main set basically. So yeah, and they showed us some sculpts, which is really, the sculpts look amazing. Of course, I think they're all going to be super rares. They showed off a Storm who has a mohawk, and she's kind of like on one foot gliding up into the air with some lightning coming out of her hands, which is pretty cool. I mean, she definitely looks like a super rare. I would be surprised if that was a rare. It might be a rare, but I'd be surprised. Then they showed off a Wolverine, which is on the side of the box with the Headmasters section, and he looks like in a dirty brown yellow costume. And he looks like he's being thrown through the air because he has a clear air trail behind him, and he has his claws are making an air trail too, which is really weird. He's definitely going to be a super rare. I mean, he might even be a chase. We don't know what the chase set for the set's going to be. Some people think it's going to be Age of Apocalypse because that was the chase theme for Wolverine and the X-Men set too. Was it? No, it's not Wolverine and the X-Men. No, it's Uncanny X-Men. That was the last X-Men set. And some people may say Deadpool and the X-Force was the last X-Men set, which I would also agree with. So this Wolverine may be a chase. He looks like a chase, in my opinion. With the trails coming off the claws, I would say he might be a chase. Then they show off an Angel, which he's in his black and yellow costume, which is supposed to be like the first class X-Men. Like, this is the very first group of X-Men. But the trail makes me think he's a super rare. Because, I mean, look how big his wings are. Look at the clear trail coming from up behind him. It makes me think he's a super rare. But that also makes me think, like, he's probably only going to be like 60, 70 points. It's going to be like a rather weak super rare. So he may be a rare. I don't know. And then they show off a Magneto. And I got to bring this picture up. The Magneto is so awesome, dude. He's angry looking, and he's picking up these metal pieces, and he's just amazing looking. And he's definitely going to be a super rare. I would be completely blown away if he was a rare. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was like a chase or something, because that is a really, really nice sculpt on him. I'd like to see how it will translate to the actual piece. So they're showing off those pieces. Let's see if we can glean any information about the thing. So pre-releases, if you don't know what a pre-release is basically WizKids sends the store like 1 or 2 cases of the set ahead of time, like usually 2 weeks before the set comes out. And players get to participate in the event and get access to the set 2 weeks early, which is cool. I mean, it's okay. It's cool. My only disappointment with it is WizKids used to send out pre-release prizes too. It used to be an LE figure of some sort that there was 3 or 4 copies of, and you could give those out as prizes, and oftentimes a map too. I remember that because I used to run events in 2015 all the time, and pre-releases were a very popular event. And then, then what they did was they moved the LE from pre-release kits to release day kits. So now you can have a pre-release and a release day event. But in my opinion, it's much harder to promote a pre-release when there's no prizes on the line. And a lot of people, they'll be saving up their money for bricks and cases, so when the set comes out, they can buy their brick or buy their case, and that's all they're really planning on buying. So by having a pre-release, you're tapping into that money before they get to spend it, meaning that they may not even have as much money on the release day to buy that brick or buy that case. They may downgrade from a case to a brick because they already bought 2 booster packs, or they played at multiple pre-releases and already bought multiple booster packs. So I think in a way, no prizes makes pre-releases harder to promote, and having them come out 2 weeks before the set comes out, which is nice. It also takes away, for some people, the money that they were going to invest in their store in a brick or a case. Some people have disposable money, so they can just do it whatever. Some people don't, though. So I don't know. Some person said online, I think this might be a little smart. They said by having these pre-release events, it means people put up their pieces on eBay early, and because there is a much shorter supply on the market, it inflates the prices of the pieces. Like, that Magneto, if it's a super rare, it may eventually be $15 or $20 on eBay, but putting it up like the first week of a pre-release, suddenly there's maybe only 1 or 2 on eBay total. The supply is very little, but the demand is still going to be high. So suddenly that Magneto that may only be worth $15 to $20 on release day may be going for $60, $70, during a pre-release event. And then people are going, dude, we got to go to the pre-release, dude. We're going to get these super rares that we can resell for like $50, $60, $70. And if we pull a chase, we can sell that for like $150 right now. So it inflates the excitement, inflates the value of the pieces. And I mean, in a way, it can be bad because there's people that put up the pieces. I'm gonna put up my Magneto for $75 because it's going for about that, and then 2 weeks later it hasn't sold yet, and it's like now people are listing them for $15, and you're like, damn, I have to sell this $75 piece for $15 now. I don't know. I mean, I think it's still a fun event to go and play with. It's brand new pieces you've never played before. It depends on when they start showing off the previews for the set. People may not have even seen the pieces yet. And it also means that the whole set will likely be spoiled 2 weeks before the set comes out, which is always fun for people that buy singles online, so they can plan out better what pieces they want to buy. But yeah, so the pre-release is coming up. If you're a store, or you play at a store, let them know about it. It's X-Man Xavier School. It's coming out in February, and they need to start planning them now. Let's see. Important dates. They have until the 3rd. They have 5 days to schedule their event. So do it now. Do it now. Okay. It looks like a cool set. I'm a huge X-Man fan. I'll give my last thoughts on it. I'm a huge X-Man fan, but at the same exact time, do we need another 6 more Wolverines, and another 4 more Storms, and another 3 more Icemans, and another 5 more Cyclopses? Probably not. So, and I don't know, the whole first class is supposed to be these are the rookie versions, but we just got rookie versions in Uncanny X-Men. They were all 50 points each. So what are these, gonna be? Are these gonna be the JSA versions, which are all 30 to 35 points each, and you can fit 9 of them on a team? I don't know. The one cool thing is they're gonna be ID cards, Xavier School ID cards, and that'll be interesting. They're bringing back ID cards, which never really got removed from the game because they're still around, but they're bringing them back. They're no longer gonna have real names. They're just gonna have their superhero names. So if an ID card says Angel, you can't use it to summon Archangel. But while in the past, if a card said Spider-Man and had real name Peter Parker, you could summon any kind of Peter Parker piece, whether it was a what if random spider hunter dude or whatever. So I think it's a good improvement for the ID cards, and will probably reduce their it will reduce how many options you have for them, but in a way that's good because it makes them more comic fun, accurate. They won't be as metagame-ish because you won't have as many options. Moving on to the next topic, we're going to be talking about the Booster Golden Organized Play Kit information. So if you don't know much about that is what is an Organized Play Kit. So we talked about what a pre-release thing is. It comes around every 3 months when a new set comes out. Well, the Booster Golden Organized Play Kit comes around every month. And it has 3 different LEs in it, 4 copies of each of them, and it gives the store enough prizes to give out on a weekly basis, so they have something to give out every single week. Usually the first, second, and then Fellowship, which is everybody votes, or random, or whatever you want to do. So the one coming out at the end of December, which stores probably already got it now and should be giving it out in January, is the Booster Golden one. And I love Booster Gold. I've always loved Booster, and I haven't always loved Booster Gold, but I fell in love with Booster Gold with the 52 comic series, in which it was basically a lot of little storylines going on. And one storyline was Booster Gold having realizing he's down on his luck, and he's nobody takes me seriously and nobody likes me. And then this other superhero shows up, and he's being all majestic and stuff, and he hates the crap out of the dude. And then ends up, I'm not going to spoil it, but Booster Gold goes on a great little adventure where he matures a lot. He becomes this great hero that the world will never know about because he's behind the scenes, all this kind of stuff. And really, I like the Booster Gold that they portrayed in that comic book series, and all the other characters like Rip Hunter and Booster Gold's sister and all that kind of stuff that they showed off and stuff. So this kit's going to have a Booster Gold, which is going to reuse the sculpt from World's Finest. If you don't know about organized play kits, monthly organized play kits, 2 other pieces have reused sculpts, maybe a slight different paint job on them, and then 1 figure has a brand new sculpt, and they all have different dials, brand new dials. So in the Booster Golden kit, Booster Gold has the sculpt from World's Finest. They're also having a robot man, who I think has the sculpt from World's Finest. Yeah. And then a brand new sculpt for Booster Gold's sidekick, Skeets. And Skeets, that little robot that flies around Booster Gold and like corrects him when he makes a mistake, or gives him a little bit of information like, sir, that's not what it said in the age 2421, Superman, blah 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 blah. And he's like, Skeets, shut up, But that's what he does, So stores have gotten the kit, and people are posting those online, and I just wanted to talk about them a little bit. So the first piece we're going to look at is the Booster Gold. He is 75 points, he has 6 range, he has Hyper Time team ability. Wow, okay, so Hyper Time is an old team ability, which basically meant if you were going to get, within adjacency of him, he gets to roll a die, and on like a 5 or 6, you can't get within adjacency of him. So that's pretty interesting. Oh, okay. And then they gave him energy shield deflection starting out. So it's harder to base him to punch him, and then he's harder to hit from range. I get that now. Okay. He has 75 points. He has Flashpoint, Justice League International, Super Buddies, Celebrity, Future, and Past keyword. And the Flashpoint is a really interesting keyword, which has been dead for a long time, and because back in the Flash set that came out like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, they gave some Flashpoints pieces in there, from that storyline. And then ever since then, there's been like maybe 1 or 2 other pieces with Flashpoint keyword. Anyways, I love Justice League International. I read Justice League Europe when I was growing up, and then it turned into Justice League International and or Justice League. Super Buddies is an interesting keyword. Celebrity, Future, and Past are interesting. He has a trait, Protector of the Timeline. When an opposing character who was not on the map at the start of the game is given an action, you may give Booster Gold an action token. If you do, that character modifies his combat values by -1 until its next turn. So, what does that mean? A character that was not on the map at the start of the game. So there's different ways to bring characters into the game, and one very popular way to do that is using ID cards. And ID cards cost 5 points, and basically a friendly character that is as many points or more than the ID card character can be given a power action and place the character into the battlefield for 1 turn. And usually it's a good way to like, okay, I'm playing 150 point Unimind, and he gets hurt, but I can still summon a 150 point Nick Fury or something. I think he's 120, whatever. And then Nick Fury comes in on his first click, and he can blow somebody away for 1 turn. Well, Booster Gold's like, okay, give me an action token, and that piece that just got ID summoned gets -1 to all their combat values until its next turn, which would then be when it goes away. So it's really interesting. It's also useful against pieces that spawn a bystander token. Now, I mean, some characters like Devil Dinosaur is going to be spawning like 3 or 4 at a time, and it's not going to be useful because when they all give it, you can't do it as well. But like, someone that like only spawns like one bystander at a game or something, that could be really interesting about it. I don't know who, but there are some that do that. So it works against that. It also would work against like the Elseworlds and What If abilities, where they can like swap out with something from the side whatever it's called, the thing over there. The pieces from What If and Elseworlds are like Iron Man or Spider-Man or something like that, where they can swap out. They weren't on the map at the start of the game, so you can give Booster Gold its action token when they're given an action, and modify their combat values to -1. And what's cool is Booster Gold is given the action token during your opponent's turn. So when it comes back to Booster Gold's turn, if he doesn't do anything that turn, he can clear, because he wasn't given an action token during his turn. So you can just sit him back in the back for 75 points and just be like, okay, he starts out with probability control and shape change. So he can just be like a 75 point support piece. He can carry somebody up, and he can just sit there and prob. And whenever, if it's against somebody that's gonna, the trade's gonna affect, just sit there and just take a token every single turn. I'm gonna take a token, you get -1 to all your combat values. I'm gonna take a token, you get -1 to all your combat values. That's really, really interesting. Okay, moving on. His special damage is probability control and shape change. When he uses shape change and succeeds, so it's a 5 or 6 normally. In addition, he can also choose another friendly character that may not be targeted by the attack. That's really nice. It doesn't have to be adjacent friendly character. They can be anywhere on the field. So it's like, okay, you're coming after me. Yeah, I hit shape change, and let's see, that other person would be your only other legal target. You can't target him either, which means your attack fizzles. You get an action token. Good day, sir. You lose. You get nothing. Good day, sir. Willy Wonka. Okay, so it's really interesting, and so it's really interesting. Hyper time team ability, some tricky shenanigans shape change, and the protector of the timeline thing. It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting for 75 points. So he starts out with running shot, 3 damage. Then he gets in charge with precision strike, and then regular prob and toughness, and then he just ends up with like sidestep and 2 damage. But precision strike, so he maybe can pink you for 1 if he can hit you for 9 with his 9 attack. I like his Dow. Personally, I would still like to see a Time Master Booster Gold, which is like the Booster Gold by the end of the 52 comic series, which is like, he would have like ridiculous phasing powers and a ridiculous probability control because he's been through the past, through the future, whatever. He knows how everything's gonna happen. But he'd also probably be a little bit slower because he's older, but he'd also be more wiser. I don't know. I think like a Booster Gold Time Master, that's 100 points. I think that would be just like my perfect version of Booster Gold. But you'd have to get him some actual defense powers. Like, give him like traded toughness because he has the power suit on. It's supposed to be protect him from damage. Come on. And then give him ESD and maybe even combat reflexes or something. I don't know. Or maybe even super senses. That'd be an interesting way of like, I know what's going to happen, super senses. Anyways, moving on to the next piece. It is Skeets. Again, that's his little robot friend that buzzes around him like, the fairy from Zelda. Hey, listen, all that kind of stuff. Now, Skeets is really interesting. The powers he has comes from the 52 storyline, I think, where one of Booster Gold's and actually Shazam's biggest enemies was Mr. Mind, who is this little caterpillar who you're like, oh, it's a caterpillar, what is he gonna do? But then he's a psychic caterpillar, dude. He's a psychic caterpillar that can like mind control people. And like what he can like I don't know what he does, but he's like a big freaking threat. Anyways, you find out in 52 that Mr. Mind has been nesting inside of Skeets, and he busts out as this big huge freaking worm, and he's like, oh crap. Spoiler. A little bit late on that, but okay. 52 is old. It's like maybe 8 years old now, but okay, whatever. Okay, so Skeets can be played at 35 points or 115 points. He has the police team ability. Oh, dang. I like Skeets, dude. I was like, oh, he's already really useful, but with police team ability too, dang, dude. Okay. So 35 points, he is really good support piece. He's flying, indomitable, and tiny. So if you're normal size, you can carry him around. He starts out with, he has a trait. If he's 35 point, if you play him at 35 points, he only has 2 clicks of life. Okay. If you play him 115 points, then he has the whole click of life, and he also gets the monster keyword, which is really interesting. Monster keyword with like that scientist from Undead. You have this like freaking undead scientist going like, yes, little robot Skeets, I'm gonna heal you up with support. Okay, anyways, okay, he starts out with the headlines of 1,000 years because he's a robot and he has like a database of all the news in his head. Adjacent friendly characters modify their attack values by +1. Okay, nifty. That with police is really nifty because If they're next to somebody making a ranged attack, police team ability will reduce the target's defense by 1. So he's not really perplexing, but he's boosting the attack of the person next to him by +1, and then lowering the target's defense by -1. So it's like a +2 basically. Also, if that character is named Booster Gold, modify his attack value by +2 instead. So say Booster Gold has 10 attack, and he's targeting somebody with a ranged attack. The police team ability will, let's say the person has 17 defense. The police team ability will reduce it down to 16 defense. And then because it's Booster Gold attacking, they get a +2 to their attack, so the 10 goes up to a 12. So instead of being a 10 on 17 where you need 7, it's now a 12 on 16 where you only need 4. And that is really nice. And then Skeets also has enhancement, so now Booster Gold is doing 1 more damage. It's really, really interesting. It's really, 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 really interesting. Skeets also has energy shield deflection and incapacitate with 4 ranged double targets. So he's going to be just as hard to hit as Booster Gold. And if you get up a little bit closer, he can start incapping your team. For 35 points, I think he's really, 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 really good. And he has Justice League International, Future, and Robot keywords. So you can play him with a Justice League International theme team, which I will definitely do. I'm really liking him. Now, if you want to play him with his Mr. Mind thing for 115 points, after those first 2 clicks are over, basically he has 3 stop clicks. And he can't be healed. Well, there you go. 3 stop clicks, 4 damage, impervious, 12 and 11 attacks, with Psychic Blast and 9 range. And when he uses Psychic Blast with a range value of 9, after action resolve, give an action token to all hit targets. And he has 2 lightning bolts, 2 targets. So he starts out with zero movement sidestep, so he can move a little bit. But then after that, he has 10 movement hypersonic speed, which is just, what the frick, dude? At that point, he's rocking like an 18, 19 impervious, 4 damage, 11 attack, 9 range, hypersonic speed. Dude, Skeet's gonna mess you up. I mean, he's just gonna mess you up. That is a funny freaking piece. I think it's a really, really interesting piece. I love how they gave him two starting lines, which is really appropriate. I mean, not appropriate, but they're really well designed. At 35 points, he's really good. At 115 points, he's really interesting. I think it's a very, very successful doll, and the sculpt looks cool too. So I'm really happy with that. And then the last piece of the 3-piece kit is Robot Man. I'm trying to bring him up. Okay, Robot Man. It's weird. I mean, I'll tell you this. He's weird. He's 110 points, which is okay. 110 points. He has the Justice Society team ability, which is weird. He also has the Justice Society keyword with All-Star Squadron and Robot. Now, I looked into him, and he definitely was on the All-Star Squadron. And I think what WizKids has been doing, and they did it with the Green Arrow from Joker's Wild, is they're like, well, All-Star Squadron and the Justice Society teamed up quite a lot, so maybe they should just also have Justice Society keyword. So now you have a Robot Man and a Green Arrow that never was a part of the Justice Society, but they also have the keyword. So that's interesting. He's indomitable, and he has 6 clicks to life for 110 points, which is okay. He starts out with charge and super strength. He has a special defense power, which is defend and invulnerability. So you can share the 17 with defend, and he has invulnerability. And then also free action, modify his and an adjacent friendly character's defense by +1. So what's interesting about that is that means he can make himself an 18 defense, And then he can also share the 17 with someone next to him, and then also make them an 18, because you replace and modify in Heroclix. So you would replace their defense with 17, and then modify it +1 to be an 18. So that's really interesting. It can also be really interesting with other JSA team abilities, other defense. We just got what is it? Is it a Wonder Woman? Is it the Wonder Woman that does it? I believe it's the Wonder Woman from Harley Quinn, the Harley Quinn set. And basically she says characters can use the Justice League team ability when they're not adjacent, as long as they're within 6 of Wonder Woman. So you could have something like KC Green Lantern, Kingdom Come Green Lantern chase piece from World's Finest with his 20 defense, sharing it to Robot Man, and then Robot Man can use his ability to boost it up to a 21. And that's nuts. That's nuts. Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Now let's look at his and he also has a trait. He has a trait. He can use regeneration, and he can increase the amount of healing by removing an adjacent or held object from the game. So I guess if he has light or heavy in his hands, because he has super strength, at least for Avisdal, or if he's next to an object, he can increase it. How much does he increase it? I don't know. Maybe it's just like a +1 healing, because now regen is just either a 1, 2, or 3 healing. So maybe it's like +1. It'd be nuts if you could hold an object and do a +2 healing, and maybe do a 5 healing. Oh Lord. Right now we don't have the exact text. So I mean, my issues with the Robot Man Doll is I like his first 3 clicks. They're pretty basic. Let's be honest. I mean, his traits and his special powers are the ones that really make it better. But his stats are pretty basic. 8 speed, 10 attack, 17 defense, 3 damage. But then he bounces on to sidestep, quake, toughness for 2. And the big thing is half his doll has 9 attack, and there's no way to modify the attack any higher. And that, to me, is just rather weak, because he has 0 range. At that point, he only has sidestep, so he can only move like 2 squares at a time. I think that's where it's good they gave him traded regen that he could use at any point, because I think if you get knocked off the first 3 clicks, you just have to ignore whatever powers you have and just try to use regen. That's probably your best bet. But for 110 points, he's going to be one of the most expensive Justice Society pieces out right now, that is modern age legal. And I feel like he should be bringing more to the team. I mean, you look at how potent the 35 point, 30 point, all those JSA pieces are. But 110 points, I feel like he needs to be bringing a little bit more. I kind of wish he had 11 attack or 4 damage or something. I mean, I love Justice Society, so I'll probably try him out regardless. But at the same exact time, I do wish he was bringing a little bit more. And honestly, like, I would rather him have 5 clicks of life with the regen, and make those 5 clicks better than having 6 clicks of life. I mean, maybe, okay, here's another idea. Maybe give him 8 clicks of life, but like make it where only the first 2 clicks are potent, and he's always trying to bounce back onto the first 2 clicks. Something like that. I feel like this is just a little bit weak for 110 points. And of course, this is a monthly organized play kit, so they don't make the most powerful pieces in these kits. But overall, I think he's interesting. It's interesting, the keywords and the team ability he has. 110 points is mighty expensive though, so I don't know if I'd play him on every JSA team I play. But it's a really interesting kit. The booster gold is really interesting. The Skeets is really interesting, and the Robot Man is okay. It's definitely one if you want to show up at your local scene and play for these pieces. I would definitely do it. You can also find them on eBay for like $10 or $12 for the whole kit. It is a pretty good price. That's how I usually get mine, so I don't have to worry about earning them on a weekly basis, and I can just play like the most fun freaking teams I can think about every week. So that's the Booster Gold and Organized Play monthly prize kit. The last segment for today, or for this podcast, and we're getting up to over an hour. It's the longest thing I've ever recorded. It is the recent rulings from the official rules forum, and I'm just going all the way back to the beginning of December because there's only been 4 rulings this month. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in November. So I guess it just was an off month. Okay, and most of these have to do with Star Trek. So I'm gonna probably clump them up together, and then we'll talk about Mara, or maybe we'll do Mara first. Okay, so this is the Harley Quinn Bombshell Mara, and she has the ability Bombshell. When Mara makes an attack targeting an opposing character, give her a Bombshell token. That's what they almost all have. Then for free, if she has 2 action tokens, remove 2 Bombshell tokens, and then make a close action. So, okay, first off, she has to be pushed. She has to have 2 action tokens. And then also, if she has 2 or more Bombshell tokens, you can remove 2 of the tokens and make a close attack. And a close attack is just a regular plain close attack. No blades, no nothing special. And then she has a Tidal Force. I guess it's a special attack. Quake. When Mara uses it, give her 1 Bombshell token for each hit target. So what's cool is, if she gets in the middle of a force and she hits a bunch of people with Quake, she could rack up the tokens. Okay, now what they're asking is, if I have Mara and I use Quake to target 3 opposing characters and I hit all 3, would Mara get 6 Bombshell tokens? 1 for each hit target and 1 for each hit. Oh, 1 for each target and 1 for each hit. So I guess what they're talking about is, okay, Bombshell, when Mara makes an attack targeting an opposing character, she gets a token. Boom. So just targeting somebody with an attack, she gets a token. But then also her Quake says she gets another token for each hit target. So they're saying, if I target 3 people with Quake, do I get a token for all 3 for targeting them, and then another 3 tokens for hitting all 3? And they say yes. The Bombshell trait triggers for each target opposing character in the attack. Mara's effect would also trigger for each hit character with Quake. In the provided example, she would end up with 6 tokens. That's really, really interesting. I think, let me just double check it. I'm going to just double check this thing. I think she also has, she's an uncommon, I believe, right? No, she's a rare. Okay. She also has an ability, tough as the sea I was born in, toughness. This is traded. Mara may remove any number of Bombshell tokens to reduce damage taken by that much. So if she goes up there and like quakes and like ends up with 6 tokens, not only can she remove 2 tokens if she's pushed at that point to make another attack, which a basic attack, not another quake. But then if they try to attack her on her next turn, she can be like, okay, I'm taking 3 tokens off and reducing your damage to 0 or -3. That's really nifty. The only bad thing is when she has those quakes, she only has a 9 attack. So at that point, it could be much harder for her to hit. But still, it's an interesting thing. If you could get her a good perplex going on, the boost her up to a 10 attack or 11 attack, I think she could deal some good freaking damage. Really, really interesting. Okay, so that's Mara from Harley Quinn. Then the next 3 have to do with, Star Trek and stuff. The new Star Trek set that came out in like December. So, this is a Mr. Spock. He has a trait that reads, It is the most logical course of action, the probability of success being approximately 83.33%. Free, choose a friendly character within 4 squares in line of fire. The next attack roll that character makes this turn cannot be re-rolled, and on a result of 2 to 4, the attack is a critical miss. And on a result of 5 to 12, the result of the attack roll is 7. Wow, okay. So I guess they're saying 7 is like the most likely roll for a 2 dice. And a lot of times you have 11 attack on an 18, you need a 7, or a 10 on a 17, you need a 7. So I guess what they're saying is like they're making it easier for you to do a critical miss, so you could use it defensively, where it's like, oh no, it says choose a friendly character. Okay, so you can't use it defensively. So you use it on a friendly character to make it much more likely that they roll the 7 needed to hit the attack, but you also make it more likely that they roll a critical miss too, which is really weird. And the question is, if I roll a physical 12, like 2 6s, and Mr. Spock changes the result of the attack to a 7, is it still considered a critical hit? And it says, yes, Mr. Spock's effect changes the result of the roll, not the actual roll itself. Note that the result will be considered as 7 will be added to the character's attack value for the effects that check for attack roll results or attack totals. But the attack will be a critical hit and cause all targets to become hit and deal the extra damage accordingly. Note that the same would apply to a roll of doubles with knockback, and the result would become 7, but the attack would still gain knockback. Okay. So that's interesting. I don't know if I like the ability, but I guess it's interesting. And it's a free ability, and your opponent can't prob it, but then you can't prob it either if you get the critical miss. So yeah, it's interesting. Okay, now it was Spock number 27 from the new Star Trek set. Let's go on to the next one. This is Koloth from the newest Star Trek set, number 34. He has an ability, let me assure you, our attentions are peaceful. Perplex, unique modifier. When Koloth uses it, he may instead modify defense +1 on himself and all friendly characters that are adjacent or have the Klingon keyword. And then the person is asking, when he modifies defense for all friendly characters with the Klingon keyword, do they still have to be within range of line of fire? Okay, my ruling here would be, it says may instead modify defense on himself and all friendly characters that are adjacent or have the Klingon ability. So if they have the Klingon keyword, it doesn't sound like they have to be adjacent, which you wouldn't normally need to be anyways for Perplex. But it doesn't say anything about line of fire or nothing, which means they would still need to be within line of fire. Let's see what they say. Yes, the effect does not specify it bypasses Perplex's normal range and line of fire requirements. So it's something like this. Normally, when you have like a special Perplex or a special prob or a special outwit, the pieces will, within the powers, they will state what effects they ignore. Like, sometimes there's a Professor X that doesn't need to have line of fire for his outwit. But just because it specifically says he doesn't need line of fire or something, doesn't mean it still doesn't have to be within range, and still doesn't mean that the power doesn't go away at the end, doesn't return at the beginning of Professor X's next turn. So, yeah. In those cases, it may specifically state it ignores this one thing. Either the power stays countered until the piece gets KO'd, or this character can use it regardless of can target anywhere on the field, or something like that. But unless it specifically states all the restrictions it ignores, it still has those restrictions or those requirements. And that's what this is saying. It doesn't state that it ignores the normal range and line of fire requirement, so it still has it. Okay, so that is Koloth number 34 from the new Star Trek set. Okay, and then the last piece is also from the new Star Trek set. It's number 3. It's Starfleet Security Officer, and it has a trait or some kind of ability. It doesn't say on here. Red shirt. When an adjacent friendly character that's 100 points or less, or has the Starfleet keyword would be KO'd, you may instead KO Starfleet Security Officer. If you do, turn the friendly character to its last non-KO click. Now he's asking, if the Starfleet Security Officer and the adjacent Starfleet keyword character would be KO'd from the same attack, can I still choose to KO the Starfleet Security Officer to save the other character? And WizKid says no. You may not choose to KO a character that is being KO'd from another effect. I guess what I would have changed with the red shirt ability, I would have put in after actions resolve or something like that. Well, no, you can't do that because then the KO would be resolved. I guess it was just weird wording that makes it hard to understand. I think what this person was trying to do, they were trying to pull off like a Magic the Gathering play where they're like, oh, you're going to destroy my character. or you're gonna destroy my card. So I'm gonna put before you can destroy it, I'm gonna sacrifice it to do something with it. Thinking you can do that. But Heroclix doesn't work like Magic. There's not really like a stack where you can put effects on and then do it. In Magic the Gathering. I think like as you put effects on a stack, they get resolved in the opposite order that they were put on the stack. So the first thing to put on the stack of effects would be the last thing you resolve. I think that's how it works. So I guess he was trying to do like a Magic the Gathering, like, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice it before you can KO it thing, which would be really interesting. But no, it's not legal. Okay, so that are the 4 rulings that WizKids have posted this month. It is the 29th, so there's only 2 more days left in the month, and it is the weekend, so I doubt they're going to post anything more. I'm going to try to keep up on these rulings because they're important to go over them. I do wish WizKids would post more rulings because there are so many pieces and so many questions, and this game gets very confusing just for little things because of the wording, it's so easy to come up with questions for Heroclix. It's ridiculous. So that's the last thing I was going to talk about on this podcast. Thank you so much for getting through this hour and almost a half podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to the type of stuff I talked about. I hope I didn't go on too much. Podcasts are supposed to be long. They're not supposed to be 10 minutes long, so that's good, whatever. I guess podcasts are a good way for me to kind of just really go into detail how I feel about topics. Like when I make my videos on YouTube, I have to kind of curb my thoughts to a certain point because I can't make an hour-long video about everything. But with a podcast, I get to talk as much as I want, and I hope this is fairly successful. I don't know. This is my first try at a podcast, so I think I put in too many fairly. I don't know why I said that many times. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts about this podcast, post them below. Any thoughts about the Watchlist Q4 2017 results, post them down below. Any thoughts? Are you excited about X-Men Xavier's Skull pre-release or the set itself? You excited to get 5 more Cyclopses and 4 more Jean Greys? I am. What do you think about the Booster Gold and Organized Play kit? Post that down below. Do you like Booster Gold? Or, you like the rest of the DC universe and he's like, oh, that dude's just a stupid idiot from the future. What do you think about Skeets? Do you like the 3515 point setting? I think it's really cool. And then finally, post any... I don't know what you can do about rulings. I'm not really sure where I was going on that. Post your thoughts on the rulings down below. I don't know what kind of thoughts there'll be other than, those were some rulings, okay? Yeah, how are you liking the Star Trek set? That's a good question. Locally, in my local area, nobody's really bought much of it. And I don't think many stores even brought it in, which is not a good sign. It's not a good sign at all. But I guess there's some people out there that really like it. So good for them. I'm good job. As someone that loves the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff WizKids is putting out, I would love to see a 5-figure booster full set for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, that would be my Star Trek set. Booyah. Booyakasha, or whatever he says. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you have a great New Year. And remember, everybody, insert catchy word phrase here. Good night.